there, and welcome to this video where I'll show you how to create this amazing painting of Michael Jackson. First, we'll create a beautiful background using some really cool and harmonious colors that go well together. And once the background is just the way we want it, it's time to project Michael onto the canvas and start sketching. The image of Michael is two-tone, so I'll introduce a special effect in the first layer, giving it a really cool and unique look in the final painting. So if you're ready to learn some new and exciting techniques, let's dive right in. First, we need some different colors that go well together. Then we'll use these inexpensive kitchen sponges. And last but not least, we'll use a variety of exciting stencils. Alright, let's get started. First, I'm adding blobs of blue and white paint all over my canvas to create beautiful color transitions. Some areas will be lighter, while others will be darker. I'm blending the colors together using my sponge, working slowly from one blob to another. I also spray a little water using a small spray bottle to make the paint glide more smoothly. I work at a steady pace, moving around the canvas and blending my blobs to create lovely soft transitions. If the transitions become too intense, I use a clean dry sponge to work between the two colors, ensuring they blend gently into each other. This way we can achieve some really beautiful transitions where you can't even see that the two colors have been blended together. These color shifts make the painting more interesting to look at in the end, as they add life and depth to the background. And the fact that the colors are so lovely and complement each other makes it even better. The color palette I'm working with here is very calm and pleasing to the eye. As you can see, I'm starting to work with a slightly darker blue now. Make sure to have something light and something dark when you work your colors together to create a little contrast in the colors. Otherwise, it can quickly become very dull to look at. Also, think about which color you choose to blend together when using this technique, as it can easily become a very messy mix. I keep working with the colors until I'm completely satisfied with my transitions. Now we're moving on to the more fun part of the work, which is playing around with a bunch of stencils. I keep working with colors that go well together here. As you can see, I'm just using the same sponges I used for my background. Because I've blended the colors together in the background and created areas where it's lighter and others where it's darker, even a tiny bit of paint will show. That's one of the things I love about working with stencils. You don't need much to create an exciting effect. I also love repetitions, so as you can see here, I'm moving my stencil around and creating the same pattern in several places. Now I'm switching my stencil to one with circles. I apply a little bit of white paint to my sponge to create some more brightness in the background. If there are areas that has become too dark, you can always use white to create an interesting effect, and it will brighten it up a lot. But that's not why I'm choosing white here. It's actually just to continue in the same colors and keep creating subtle effects in my background. Remember, when working with stencils, it's important not to have too much paint on your sponge. If you have too much, it can easily smudge and it won't look very nice. Later in the video, I use a piece of cardboard to remove most of the paint from my sponge before I start stenciling with it. This way I don't get too much paint on it, so it seeps under the stencil. But after 17 years of experience with stencils, I know my limit for how much paint I can apply to my sponge. I really enjoy creating layer upon layer of effects in my backgrounds, which is why I use a variety of stencils. This is where I start to add the depth that will later be in the painting. The more time and energy you invest in this stage, the more beautiful the result will be. In a little while, I'll add more colors to the background and you'll see that I break some of what I've just created down again. Building it up, breaking it down, building it up and breaking it down again. This way we create a lot of exciting life and depth in our background. So it's important to take your time with it and enjoy the process. As I mentioned before, I'm now adding some more color. This is partly to saturate my canvas so that I can't see the circles from my sponge that I created in the first layer, and also partially conceal some of my effects again. I'm not using a lot of paint because it doesn't take much to create more calmness and tone down certain areas a bit. Now it's time to add some color to spice things up a bit, so it doesn't become too boring to look at. It needs to have some life in it, so I'm introducing green now. I'm still working within the same color family, and since blue and yellow creates green, it will create some beautiful yellow, green and slightly blue areas that complement each other nicely. Now I'm also adding some yellow paint and blending it in. As you can see, it becomes almost the same green color because the blue underneath is shining through. But it's still a bit brighter in the color and slightly different. I add a little water here to thin it out a little bit. Now that I have two colors on top of each other, I can create a reverse effect with my stencil. I take a damp cloth and then I wash off my paint again. Since the blue paint underneath isn't fully cured, it also gets washed off. So, if I wanted the blue color to be the visible color, I should have waited for my paint to fully cure, approximately 24 hours, but I'm way too impatient for that. What do you think? Doesn't it look cool? Now it looks like I have text in my background, text that doesn't necessarily make any sense. Like with the other stencils, it's all about fragments here and there, so I also repeat the process with this stencil several times. This stencil is one I've designed and cut myself based on the mathematical calculations I found online and then converted into a cutting file. Now I also want to add some color text in the background as well, so I'm taking my sponge that I used for the background and using the small amount of paint that's still in it. I'm not pressing too hard with the sponge because I just want to create a gentle shadow effect. Once again, I move my stencil around on my canvas and create some effects here and there. Now it's time for an alphabet stencil. I think it's the Russian alphabet, but I'm not sure. If you know, please let me know in a comment. I'm doing a little trick here where I apply the paint directly to the sponge again. But since there's too much paint, to avoid smudging when I start dabbing on my stencil, I fold the sponge in half to get the paint well into my sponge. As with the other stencil, I also move this around on my canvas to create fragments of it here and there. I rotate it so that some parts are vertical and others are horizontal. However, I don't tilt it to one side or the other. My OCD can't handle that. So I stick to being straight up and down with the same stencil, meaning only vertical and horizontal. I've applied the other stencils in the same direction because it can get quite chaotic if different patterns are pointing in all directions. So please keep that in mind when creating backgrounds like these. Once again, I create fragments here and there to achieve some balance in my painting. Finding the right balance can be challenging at times, but my experience tells me that as long as you work with the colors that are related, you can add a lot of effects to your background without overdoing it. When you start introducing contrasting colors, you need to be more careful and thoughtful about it. However, since I'm still faithful to my color choice, I can create quite a lot of these leaves scattered around. If it becomes too dominant, I can always tone it down with some transparent layers that I lay over it. It will only add more depth to my painting, so don't be afraid to play around with it and experiment with your materials. Only good and exciting things can come out of it. And if it doesn't turn out well, just paint it over with white and start over. and you'll have learned something for the next time. I'll speed up the process a bit here so you don't fall asleep. Now I'll just continue working with the same darker blue color. I'm sure you've understood now what it's all about. To create balance in the painting, it's important that there aren't massive amount of dark on the one side and nothing on the other. So I make sure that there's an even distribution as much as possible. Now it's time to project Michael Jackson onto my canvas. As you can see, he has some letters and other effects in his face, so I'm going to tidy up the background before I start drawing him. I do this by applying some titanium white paint to my sponge and then adding a thin layer of white paint where I can see his face going to be. I work in circles and I apply thin layers. It should only slightly tone down the background, not make it disappear completely. This way I create a bit of calm in the background so that his face will stand out more. I give it another layer because I feel it didn't tone down the effects enough. You should apply enough so that your background's effect don't steal the focus of Michael Jackson here. When I'm satisfied with how it looks, I start drying it with my hairdryer. It would ruin my Posca pen if there were wet paint when I began outlining him. So it's crucial that it's completely dry. Now I start outlining him. As you can see, there are two colors in the portrait, grey and black. Initially I focused on the grey area. That's why I'm only tracing that part. Where you can see it will be black later, we don't need to paint now. Therefore, it's essential not to move your projector while working on the first layer to maintain accuracy. I simply establish a boundary for the black within the region of his hair. After completing the initial layer, I'll proceed to outline the black areas. It's essential to make sure everything aligns so that when you sit down to paint, you know where to start and where to finish. In other words, you can see within which outlines to paint. Now I'll turn off my projector and begin painting the base color. I've chosen green to maintain the colors I've been working with all along. Grey, in my opinion, is quite a dull color, so I don't want to use it here. I'm using some pretty cheap acrylic paints for this painting. In fact, the label of the tube says it's opaque paint. But even after 3 coats of paint, it still wasn't covering well. It was quite frustrating as I spent a lot of time trying to get it even and nice. But then I had the idea to create stencil effects in the green area to camouflage the uneven green color, which still showed through after 3 coats of paint. Sometimes you have to think outside the box and find solutions like that. Actually, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Instead of being just a solid color, I've created something interesting and unique that people can explore. I love it. I'm using 3 different stencils here. One with doodles, one with text and one with dots to create some variation. I think it looks really cool and it has a somewhat military feel to it. I'll definitely be making more paintings using this technique. Finally, I'm taking a couple of minutes to clean up any paint that has gone outside the green area. I quickly wipe it off with a damp cloth before it dries. Now I turn on my projector again to paint the black layer. This is where my painting really starts to come to life. Once again, the more effort you put into this stage, the more beautiful your artwork will turn out. And remember, you have the freedom to choose any subject you like. Only your imagination sets the limit for what you can achieve with a projector. Many artists won't admit to using one because the art world can be very critical. But in my opinion, a projector is just a tool, just like a car or a bicycle, that helps us to get from point A to point B more efficiently. It would be silly not to use that opportunity when it's available. So I would suggest not hiding behind your projector and trying to conceal its use. I love my projector and it's been my source of income for 16 years. I've sold my artwork, I've taken commissions, and I conducted hundreds of courses and workshops, along with creating an online art school. I love it, and I'm proud to say it out loud. You should be too. Now I just need to add the finishing touches, and I have created an amazing painting that I can be proud of. There are many people who can't draw, and that's where the projector comes in as a fantastic tool to create something unique for those who may not have strong drawing skills. If you found my video helpful, I'd greatly appreciate it if you would give it a like. If you want to learn more about creating your own art and earning money with your projector, feel free to subscribe to my channel. See you!